The Jaguars have had a lot of good fortune in the second round over the years. Is Maason Smith a part of that as well? I think so, and I'll tell you why here today on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome to another edition of Locked On Jaguars. I am the host, Tony Wiggins of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. I got to let you know that we're free to subscribe to on our YouTube page. Make sure you go over there and you'll see it. It says Locked On Jaguars. Hit the like button, subscribe button, hit that bell so you get notifications each and every time we drop an episode. Also, wherever you get your podcast, audio-wise, whenever you're listening to podcasts, whether you're driving or at work, when you're sneaking, make sure you check into that location each and every day so you don't miss an episode of Locked On Jaguars. I got to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, we need to talk about Maason Smith. The shock has kind of worn off a little bit from the entire draft process. The draft picks everybody's getting ready to come to mini camp and all of that. Teams have started to retool and look at the veterans that are available at free agency and to see what they can go into training camp with. By the time we get to segment 3 today, we will talk about how they have finally addressed size and how a lack of size, we are not going to allow that to be a crutch anymore, because a lot of talk was that the Jaguars weren't physical enough, right? That came from the GM and the coach. They weren't physical, and we saw them getting pushed around on both sides of the ball. Well, now it appears that the Jaguars have done everything that they have, at least in one off season. They have really, really done a lot to fix that. So we'll make sure that we discuss that here on Locked On Jaguars in segment 3. Segment number 2, changing the look of the defensive line. Why I was a little bit shocked that they took Maason Smith, not because of Maason Smith, but because of some other stuff that I'll have to tell you and share with you here today. And it won't come as a surprise because in the lead up to the draft, everyone knew and saw exactly where I thought they were going. I thought they would go for that twitchy pass rusher type, but who was not so much off of their off the mark on traits that it would not matter, but they didn't do that. They went straight back to traits, and I'll tell you why. Even that's a little bit of a surprise for me. Last but not least, and of course, we're not going to bury the lead, Maason Smith provides that size. So we're going to get into it right now a little bit. The main surprise is once they got Eric Armstead, I thought that they were done getting the big, long, angular defensive tackle. Once they addressed that part of it in free agency, I said they may go back to that position maybe in the 3rd or 4th round. And then I remember they had Tyler Lacey, right, who's kind of that guy that I'm sort of describing, who's a little bit of an inside-out dude, but who has, if you watch him, I think he's listed at 6'4", 280. He's still on the roster. He looks a lot bigger than that, and he plays a lot with a lot more physicality than that. So he may very well be someone that they look at for depth. He was a 4th-round pick last year out of Oklahoma State. Look, the bottom line is I think that they saw a weakness on their team, and they said, never again. It's almost like what the Falcons did with quarterback. It's like, never again. We're not going to ever go into a season where we don't have enough people up front. And now that we're going to a 4-man front as opposed to a 3 with a little bit more versatility, it explains to you why they attacked this in so many different ways with so many different bodies. It's almost like never going to be. I need to think of an acronym like NBA Young Boy stands for Never Broke Again Young Boy, right? Young Boy Never Broke Again. Well, we need to think of something like Jacksonville defensive line Never Small Again, because Never Small Again. NSA, that's the National Security Agency. So NSA, Never Small Again. We are not going to be little again. Pause. But you see where I'm going. We are not going to be without physicality on our defensive line. In fact, we're going to hit it so hard. We're going to hit it so hard in the draft that we're going to get one in round 2, and then we're going to get his teammate in round 4. And that's what they did with Jordan Jefferson, another real big guy. So Maason Smith goes about 6'5", about 315. Once he gets, and that 6'5" is like 6'5 and a half. So once Maason Smith gets to the point where he's on an NFL, eating NFL food and on an NFL beef program and getting a little bit bigger, because normally when this happens, many times when you get these jumbo guys from college, what usually happens, they get in the NFL, and some of them, they actually get big and they stay big, but they lose a little bit of that baby fat, right? Maason doesn't have any of that. Maason looks like a jumbo Trayvon. If you see him, you don't see a whole bunch of fat. His issue has been health, staying healthy, keeping his knees right, and being on the field. 5-star recruit, one of the top 25 players in America coming out of high school, was a beast, an absolute beast as a freshman, played some defensive end along with defensive tackle. The start of his sophomore year, got hurt in the game that I was watching live against Florida State, got hurt, came back last year with a cumbersome brace on. I think early on you could tell that he was trying to get right, but then towards the end of the year, he really started playing well. And that's why he won the process of the draft process, because when it came time to get drafted at the end of the year, he was almost 2 years removed from, at least a year and a half removed from his injury. He had gotten used to playing again. So what happened was he showed up at the right time to be 100% healthy. And he happened to get picked by a team that has his former defensive coordinator coaching linebackers. It was too much like right for him to fall to the Jaguars, and it was too much like right for the Jaguars to pick him. Why am I so sold that it's going to be a successful pick? From the fact that he was the only guy really left on the board that looked like him, that's one thing, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work. I think it's going to work because remember the thing that I talk about, what are you bringing a player into? That's exactly why I think it's going to work, because they signed Eric Armstead, right? Not only did they sign Eric Armstead, they also they re-signed Josh Allen, okay? Drafted Maason, drafted his teammate. They have Devon Hamilton, they still have Roy Robinson Harris. So I guess when you ask that question, you remember the fact that the situation that he is coming into, it doesn't require him to do as much. You're not expecting him. He doesn't have to come in here and turn the world upside down. They're going to allow whatever inexperience he has, they're going to bring that along slowly. And they're going to address it, and they're going to get it out, and it's going to really, really be an easier transition for him, because now you're talking about 25, 30 plays, maybe. He's going to give him time, and here's the thing. It does not appear that what the Jaguars did in this situation was look ahead too much. It doesn't appear that that's what they did, and that's the one thing that I kind of wanted to guard against, was them doing exactly that. I did not believe that they needed to go in and get a dude that they think is going to instantly come in and help them start. I think what you have to do in the draft is you have to go shopping for the draft. Like I said before, you have to go shopping for the draft with a full stomach, because it's not about just building your team for one season. That's not what they did when they drafted him. They didn't build his team for this team for 1 year. While they did need physicality, if you lack that, then fixing it isn't for one season. Fixing it is like trying to fix it forever. And that's why I like this pick a whole bunch. I really do. I really, really love this draft pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now I'm reading these comments, so people are sitting here. I'm reading the comments from a previous post about Maason Smith, and folks are like, "Why are we constantly taking projects? Why are we taking?" I think we have to start looking at this from a perspective of guys that this team views as um, longer term dudes before you actually get the goods. That's not really what I call a long term project. It's not. It's what the draft is for. We have to realize that most people that get picked, they aren't ready to play in the NFL. They're not. They're all projects to a certain extent. Some dudes will just be able to help you more. And then if you pick this guy and you didn't have a defensive tackle that was a day one player already in front of them and they had to play early, that would be a problem. I think when you get guys and you give them the correct amount of time that they're going to need in order to start blossoming, developing correctly, I think that's when you hit on something. And I think the Jaguars have done exactly that. Segment two, what we're going to talk about is this: changing the look of the defensive line. Not only from alignment, which has been the magic word around this city for the last week, but just from a personnel standpoint. I'll tell you exactly what I mean by that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by BetterHelp. If you've ever been like me and you've had multiple situations where you needed therapy and you needed help to get yourself back on track because you got knocked off your square a little bit, then BetterHelp can be right there for you, just like they have been for me. It could be life altering. It could be a death in the family. It could be just divorce. Anything as simple as something as you trying to make sure that you spend your time, enough time with loved ones, because believe it or not, time management is one of the biggest things that can divide people and families. I know because it did me. And BetterHelp helped me figure out a way to use my 24 hours to do the things I love with the people that mean the most to me. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon for 10% off your first month. Segment number 2, or dos, as they say in Mexico, where I hope to be in a few weeks. Here on Locked On Jaguars, thank you for joining us here today, talking about, ironically, the second round, right? How you say that? Dos round, because you know you have to flip it when you say the words and numbers in Spanish. Espanol. You have to say the words first and then the number, or the number first. Whatever you do in America, flip it the other way. That's how it's supposed to go. So, round number 2, the Jaguars have had historically really, really good success. Somebody said Brenton Strange. Well, not yet. We ain't giving up on him yet. But no, we're talking about Maurice Jones-Drew, Mercedes Lewis, Rasheem Mathis, Miles Jackson. Really, really, really good second-round picks have played for this team. I know all y'all want to talk about is Walker Little, who I haven't totally given up on, but it seems like the Jaguars have. I know y'all want to talk about some of the what have you done for me lately or the Johnny come latelys. No, we ain't talking about them. We talking about the old stuff. Talk about the old stuff. And because we're trying to see if this team's going to get back to a little bit of the old feeling that we had before before 14 of the last 15 years, right? And the way that you do that is by getting good players, and you have to hit them past the first round. Trent has been real good in the first round. Second round, not so much. And then Devin hasn't been good in the late rounds of the draft. But we think this year here on Locked On Jaguars, we believe that they did a pretty good job in the second round of the draft. We actually do. We feel like they did a good job. They took Maason Smith, big 6'5.5", 315-pound defensive tackle out of LSU. So we can't say that we don't like the competition because it's the Southeastern Conference. And it's a big school in the Southeastern Conference West Division. He was a 5-star recruit. The only thing that people are really talking about is the fact that his inexperience. Well, much like, here's what happens when you play behind a lot of great people and you have an injury that kept you out for most of a year, you're going to be inexperienced because the first year you probably didn't play as much. That's the same thing with Amarius Mims at Georgia. You probably didn't play as much because you had, 7,000 NFL people in front of you. And then when you did play, you stood out. And then you got hurt your second year. And then your third year, you were coming back from an injury. So, yeah, to say that inexperience is a factor, it's right. But there's also reasons why inexperience exists. Injuries is one of them, and playing on a roster full of NFL players is another. And sometimes we just got to use common sense when we are trying to use reasons and excuses for attempting to maybe dismiss the possibility that sometimes people can be good. And the fact that Trent has not done a good job in the past, in recent history of drafting second round picks, does not mean a thing. He can get it right this time. And we're going to sit here and let him try to do it. He ain't drafted good wide receivers in his career, but guess what he did? He took a wide receiver in the first round that I think is going to be pretty good. So what are we to do? Are we to sit here and just let bad history continue to give us Stockholm Syndrome, or we're going to move on? Let's just move on. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt until I don't. And all I know is I do see something that looks different. Their defensive line looks different than it did last year. One, because they're going to line up differently. Two, because they're going to have a different scheme where everything is going to be in front of them and downhill and more attacking. And three, since they're going to attack, they got some bigger bodies and more watchdogs, and they got guys that look like they're the type of people that you want to attack with. So yeah, changing the look of the defensive line was good. Not only changing the look, but changing the mentality, changing the way they're made up, changing how they're yoked. You take one big, strong guy out, you put another one in. Between him and Eric Armstead, that's about 6 foot, 6.5, 6'7", probably 300 pounds of pure physicality and domination at a position where you need pure physicality and domination. And I think that's what we're going to get. I know some of my Florida State fans are like, man, we beat them 2 years in a row. He wasn't a factor. Well, the first year he got hurt. He was the factor before he got hurt. And then he got hurt. The second year, it was the year after he got hurt. So I ain't tripping on that. And I told, just like somebody accused me of having rose-colored glasses when it came to Jerry and Jones. Once guys leave college, I don't care. I do, but I don't let it interfere in me doing my job. I get paid to do this. I ain't doing this for fun. This ain't fun and fandom. This is financial. I got to be right, or at least be authentic and be genuine. I ain't speaking to a whole bunch of Florida State fans that also like the Jaguars. I'm speaking to Jacksonville Jaguar fans. Now, me watching certain games and being able to pay attention to it and to be able to do it live, and when I watch stuff live, I kind of do it with a scout's eye, because I know that eventually I'm going to try to turn into a scout and start talking about players. So I don't, just like a lot of people that play fantasy football, they can sit and watch games and think about fantasy and game. I really don't do that. The hardest thing for me, and I play fantasy football, I'm in 2 leagues. The hardest thing for me when I watch a game is to not try to scout players, because it's hard to do. You got a whole bunch of people to watch. So that's one of the things that for me is the absolute most difficult to do. I'll tell you what, we said that we were going to start talking about things where they couldn't use the point fingers anymore. Well, lack of size won't be a crutch. They can't use that because they got it. And that's one of the things that they said this year. And I will bring back this question. How did y'all know? How did y'all not know y'all weren't physical? You built it. You watching it every day. How do you know? How do you know? How do you not know that you're not physical? How do you not know that you just got to come out here and tell us that the team you built wasn't big, strong, and physical enough? How do you know? How do you not know that? How do you not know that? They can't use it as a crutch this year. I'm going to talk more about that in just a second on Locked On Jaguars, but I have to first tell you, if you're watching Fox Sports or ESPN on TV all day, and if you have to turn your volume down because they're yelling and screaming so much, I mean, like you mute it and you still hear them, make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. We're going to close this out. Segment 3, talking about where size won't be a crutch. We'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. I have to let you know about the Game Time app. You want to buy tickets to any event, sporting event, you name it, Game Time is where you're supposed to do it. Because this thing about waiting till the last minute where somebody goes, your lack of planning does not constitute an emergency on my part, well, that is complete nonsense. This is one place where your lack of planning absolutely does fit the criteria and the agenda of Game Time, because they have special last minute deals on tickets, and they have a whole crew of people that are there just to help you get tickets, even if the event has already started. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Theater tickets, comedy show tickets, does not matter. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Third, final segment here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Wanted to let you guys know that the Jaguars will have to find something else to blame any inept type of play that they have. They won't be able to blame size and physicality when it comes to the defensive line. Because like we thought they had been doing when they were picking all these dudes because of all these traits, that they were going to be bigger and more physical and stronger than everybody else. Turns out they weren't. In fact, they were one of the weakest teams in the league, especially in the trenches when it counted. They couldn't stop the run, couldn't rough the passer, got pushed around at critical times, and then they couldn't do it on the other side. They couldn't push people back. Folks had been pushing them around. So the question becomes, what can you do if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars? How can you get big and physical overnight? Well, you have to hit these positions hard, and that's exactly what they did. In a year where everybody was talking a lot about wide receiver and DB, especially going early, the Jaguars did not do that. And I always have said this in the past. What a team does during the draft will tell you exactly what they were thinking. They actually told you this year what they were thinking. And the draft was indicative that that's what they were thinking, except it was on defense and not offense. Change the defensive coordinator. Probably made the biggest additions when you think about Josh Allen too as an addition, because he was retention. Probably made the biggest additions to the defensive line. The defensive line, the defense coordinator is now coached by a career defensive lineman. The Jaguars thought they were losing these games the last couple of years because they weren't good enough in the trenches on the defensive line and schematically. Bottom line, that's it. If they're right or wrong, one of the things that we saw this week early on, that folks were pointing the finger. And I said, let's stop that. Let's focus now whether they're right or wrong now. Because if you didn't have the right players, if the scouting department didn't do their job, if they don't have the right mix and chemistry, and then more importantly, if the offensive line doesn't work, if those four returning starters that they believe in so much don't gel together along with the new center, Mitch Morse, who I think, and we all hope he's going to be the starter, at least we think he is, then guess what that's going to mean? It's going to mean like, and don't nothing else matter. But slowly but surely, all of the things that folks argue about and some of the things that the Jaguars as a team mentions, some of the things are things that we've talked about that we don't think have been adequately addressed, like most people believe that they need to get another edge and another veteran DB. Whatever they do or don't do, we can now have one less thing to point at what we believe the problem and the solution is. You can't talk about size on the defensive line, size and depth on the defensive line. You can't. All right. This is also Trent's fourth cycle as the GM. 21. I ain't gonna even count 20 when he was the assistant. 21, 22, 23, 24. Whatever this team is or isn't is on Trent Baalke. And even the people that are his biggest fans can admit that. So what we're doing one by one, we're just going through saying, okay, they say they fixed this. This is the process that they decided they were going to alleviate this problem. Okay, what are they going to fix? Can't fix everything, but what are they going to prioritize? This is one of the things they prioritize. Wide receiver. The wide receiver room has 3 guys that weren't there, if we don't include undrafted free agents. And the defensive line now has 2 guys in the middle. 3, actually, that weren't there, including Jordan Jefferson. They thought catch radius, talent on the outside, and obviously the center position and being able to stop people in the trenches was the problem. How many times did I talk about the deficiencies along the offensive line, in particular on the interior, and how many times did I talk about the deficiencies on the defensive line at the interior? And also, how many times did I mention slot corner? I have been saying it until the birds will come flying. I have been saying this for 3 years, and it finally got addressed. So I hope for their sake they're right. I hope for the Jaguars fans' sake that the Jaguars are right about this and they finally got it fixed. We can help you fix your TV viewing. That's right. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. A little PSA as I end. Y'all don't know this, but 5 minutes into my show, I got a phone call. I hit pause and found out a client of mine who, over the last 4 weeks, just went in the hospital. He thought he had pneumonia. Well, Herbert Bartley, my friend, who's a pastor here in Jacksonville, subsided and went home. Love your loved ones. We're going to pray for him, but you guys love your loved ones. Hug those people close to you. This actually happened right during the show. So if you saw me a little bit off a little bit, I do apologize. But make sure you guys take care of each other, man. I say that, and I don't say that with, without a little bit of a heavy heart. So you guys take care of each other. We'll see you tomorrow here, another day on Locked On Jaguars.